Criminal Volume 7, Wrong Time, Wrong Place, written by Ed Brubaker, art by Sean Phillips. Alright, Volume 7 of Criminal, Wrong Time, Wrong Place. This volume came out in 2016, 5 years after Volume 6, so Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips took a long break before finally returning to Criminal. This volume is set in the 1970s, and it only covers 2 issues, although they're oversized special issues. The first issue focuses on Teeg Lawless and his struggles to survive in prison, and the second issue focuses on Tracy Lawless. It's from his perspective, and we see him and his dad go on a road trip, and we see sort of the father-son relationship that they have and how kind of messed up it is. This volume is a real character study about both of these people and how they're the same as well as different. Another interesting storytelling device in this volume is that we have a story within a story. Both Tracy and Teeg Lawless are reading a comic within the comic, and we, the reader, actually get to read that comic as well. So Tracy Lawless, he is reading this sort of werewolf comic, and Teeg Lawless is reading this comic that is sort of like Conan the Barbarian. And through those stories, we have some themes that mirror the overall story going on, sort of like in Watchmen with the Tales of the Black Freighter story within that comic. So it's very interesting to see how it works within this volume. Alright, let's dive into it. Volume 7, Wrong Time, Wrong Place. Issue 1, Wrong Time. This is from the Criminal Special Edition 2015 issue. This issue takes place in 1976. Teeg Lawless is in jail, and he is reading a comic book called Savage, about a character named Zangar the Savage. Zangar the Savage is a comic starring a Conan the Barbarian ripoff kind of character. We see some pages of this comic. Zangar is injured, but he pushes onwards. A woman with a dagger is fending off 2 men who wish to kill or rape her. Zangar rushes into action and saves the woman. He lifts his sword and runs at the men, swinging at them and slicing them in half, decapitating them. Zangar, he's injured though, he's holding his stomach. The woman, Ravina, is a priestess, and she strips naked and paints her chest with Zangar's blood and starts a chant to save him. Now we see Teeg, he's in jail, he's trying to read this comic book, but he gets interrupted by another prisoner who asks him, "Hey, is that the one that got titties in it?" And Teeg answers, "Yeah, it's got tits in it." The prisoner tells Teeg that a Mr. G wants to talk to him, so Teeg gets up, he rolls up the comic book and puts it into his back pocket, and he goes to see this Mr. G. Now, the two of them, they are walking through the prison, and Teeg reflects on what got him here in prison this time. It was a stupid thing. Teeg and his crew robbed an armored car full of cash, and before they got to the split to divide the money, Teeg and the driver named Wilson went to a bar to celebrate, and Teeg got into a bar fight with a biker in the bar, and eventually the cops came and arrested Teeg. The biker that Teeg fought wasn't even pressing charges, and the cops, they didn't even know about this armored truck robbery. See, Teeg had a bench warrant for his arrest for failure to show up in traffic court for a traffic violation a bit back, and now he has to spend the next 30 days in jail. Anyway, it's only 30 days, and that is how Teeg wound up in jail. So far, he's done about 2 weeks of his 30-day sentence. Teeg is following this other prisoner, and they are walking to see this Mr. G, who's another prisoner in the jail that has all sorts of high-up connections. Teeg notices, though, that the prisoner that came to talk to him to bring him to this Mr. G has SS Bolt tattoos on him, which are, of course, Nazi white supremacist tattoos. Teeg, he knows this guy is lying to him. Teeg comments to the man, That's some nice ink. The Nazi replies, oh, thanks, I got it done in Lompoc. Teeg replies, white power, right? And the Nazi answers, Hail Hitler, brother. Teeg asks the man, how's Mr. G feel about that? And the Nazi asks, what do you mean? And Teeg answers, you know, since he's a Jew, G stands for Goldstein, shithead. Teeg knows that Mr. Goldstein is not going to send a Nazi to go collect him. The Nazi pulls out a shiv, and Teeg realizes that this guy is here to kill him. Teeg pulls out the comic book that he had in his pocket, and with it, he whacks the Nazi, and then he knocks the shiv out of the guy's hand. Teeg then hits the Nazi to the floor, and he asks him, why was he trying to kill him? The Nazi answers that Teeg has a big dollar sign on his back. Someone wants him dead. Teeg asks, who? The Nazi, he doesn't know. It's just the word in here that there's a price on Teeg. Teeg, with the rolled up comic book, shoves it into the Nazi's eye and kills him with it. Teeg, he then burns the comic, destroying the evidence. Teeg's a little bit bummed, though. He never got to finish the story in the comic. Teeg, he goes to use the phone in prison, and he phones his friend Wilson, who's on the outside, the one that he pulled the armored truck robbery with. This Wilson is holding the money for Teeg. Teeg tells him to hold on to it until he gets out of prison, and if Teeg's wife Angela asks for some money, he can give her $300 or so to tide her over for now. Teeg also tells Wilson to talk to a man named Ringo. Ringo is one of Sebastian Hyde's people, and Wilson is to tell Ringo that Teeg is in jail, but he's still their guy. Needs to make sure to get that message across. Teeg then hangs up. This Ringo is a lieutenant that works for Sebastian Hyde, the big crime boss in the city. A week ago, Teeg was supposed to help this Ringo kill a city councilman that was blocking a construction contract that Sebastian Hyde wanted. But of course, Teeg wasn't able to do anything about it because he was stuck here in jail for the last 2 weeks. Teeg is wondering, is that why he has an open contract hit out on him? Just because he didn't do this city councilman job? It doesn't seem like Sebastian Hyde's style to put out a hit on him just over that. Teeg, he goes to the prison library, and he talks with the prison librarian and asks him if he's got another copy of last month's issue of Zangar the Savage. The librarian asks what happened to the previous copy that Teeg took out of the library. Teeg, lying, says a guard took it off him in the lunchroom. Said I looked at him wrong. The librarian tells Teeg that word around the prison is that Teeg probably won't be returning anything he checks out of the library next. Teeg tells the librarian, I'll be fine, just find me the damn comic. The librarian manages to find another copy of it for Teeg. Later on, Teeg is reading more of the Savage comic, and Zangar apparently got healed up by Ravina, the sexy naked priestess, and they banged, but eventually Zangar left to continue his quest to get revenge on the people that double-crossed him. Zangar travels to find some old man, and he asks the man, where are the jewels? His jewels. And the old man says that the people that apparently stole the jewels off of Zangar are headed to the gleaming city of Glahera to sell the jewels. Zangar, he stabs the old man in his chest with his sword, and then someone interrupts Teeg in the prison yard, and he can't read anymore. It's Mr. G. Mr. G is an associate of Sebastian Hyde, and he has a message for Teeg. Ringo, in fact, informed Sebastian Hyde of Teeg's situation. Sebastian Hyde wants Teeg to know that he isn't the one behind this contract hit out on him. But Sebastian is pissed at Teeg for not doing his job and getting rid of that city councilman a week ago. Now, normally in jail, this Mr. G would provide protection in jail for all of Sebastian Hyde's men like Teeg here. But, as a form of punishment, Sebastian Hyde is waiving all of Teeg's protection. If Teeg survives, Sebastian says that Teeg can have his old job back, but for now, Teeg is on his own. Teeg replies, "That's messed up, man." And Mr. G replies, "Yeah, it is. And there's one other thing. He wanted to make sure it wasn't easy for you." All of a sudden, some prison guards come in and beat the shit out of Teeg, whacking him with their batons and stomping him a bit, breaking his hand, and they leave Teeg lying there in the prison yard. Teeg eventually stumbled down to the prison infirmary, and he gets patched up. Now Teeg, he doesn't know who is trying to kill him, who or even why. A lot of people in the prison will be trying to murder him over the next few weeks, trying to cash in on that open contract hit out on him, but Teeg only has a few weeks left in his 30-day jail sentence before he can get let out. So for now, all Teeg has to do is survive, stay alert, and keep his guard up. The next day, someone tries to stab Teeg with a screwdriver in the lunchroom, but Teeg smashes the guy's face in with a lunch tray. The next day, Teeg fends off another attacker in the laundry room. The next day, he stabs another attacker in the eye with his thumb. The next day, he fights off some attackers in the showers. The next day, he kills a guy and hangs him on a cell door. And the next day, Teeg is dosed with some acid, and he is really tripping balls, and he is fighting off some other attackers. Then he starts stumbling around, wondering how is he gonna get through this. His perception of the world is all messed up and he can't make sense of anything. Eventually, the nice librarian guy whom Teeg is kind of friends with finds him, and he decides to help Teeg. Teeg, he wants to get to the infirmary to help with this acid trip, but the librarian tells Teeg, "That's exactly where they want you, kid. Word is you're getting out early tomorrow. Warden's letting you off with time served for some reason, so tonight is their last shot at you, and they want you strapped to a bed because you'll be easy to kill there." The librarian brings Teeg to a book storage room and says that Teeg can ride out the rest of his drug trip here. Teeg asks the librarian why is he helping him. Teeg hears he's worth $5,000. The librarian says that he's getting out of here in 3 months. He's not gonna risk trying to kill Teeg for just 5 G's. Besides, he says, us real Zangar fans, we gotta stick together, right? We see more of that Zangar comic now. Zangar arrives in the gleaming city of Glahera. He is trying to get his revenge on those who double-crossed him. He searches the city and finds Orphea, his old lover. When Zangar first met her years ago, she was just a harem girl for a traveling prince. He sneaks into her window to kill her. She was the one who enlisted the thief named Quentin, who eventually screwed him over. Orphea, when she sees Zangar, smiles and says how happy she is to see him. But Zangar is having none of her games though. She cries and tells Zangar that she didn't want to betray him, but they said that they would kill her and she just wanted to live. Back to Teeg Lawless. Teeg, he gets out of jail the next day. Sebastian Hyde had paid off the warden to get Teeg out early because Teeg was needed for a job. Teeg is picked up from the jail by Sebastian Hyde's lieutenant named Ringo. Ringo drives Teeg home. They are supposed to meet the next day at the Undertow to go over the new job. Ringo informs Teeg that the contract hit that was out on him was only for people in prison, so no one should be gunning for him on the street, at least not yet. This was all annoying to Teeg though. He still didn't know who was trying to kill him. It was like a dangling plot thread in a story he'd forgotten to finish and nagging at him. Teeg goes home to see his family. He drinks, He hangs out for a bit, but eventually he goes to head out. Teeg's wife Angela tells Teeg at least take one of the kids with him when he goes, so Teeg decides to bring little Tracy Lawless with him. They go out, Teeg buys some comic books at the newsstand, Savage for him, and some little kid comic for Tracy called Mikey Millions. Teeg then drives over to see his friend Wilson, and he tells Tracy to stay in the car while he goes inside. He goes inside to talk to this Wilson. Wilson is the one that Teeg did the armored truck robbery with. Teeg asks Wilson for his share of the score, but Wilson tells Teeg the money's gone, man. He owed this guy Barber a lot of money, and his guys came here and tossed the place and found it. It's not his fault. Teeg is furious. He is winding up to punch his friend Wilson, maybe even kill him. And we jump back to Zangar. Zangar has tracked down the thief Quentin, the one that screwed him over. They are sword fighting, and Zangar slashes at Quentin's body, and Quentin is trying to save himself. He tries to reason with Zangar, and he tells him, "Don't you understand? You could have a place here among us. You could have glory, power, riches." Zangar says the only thing he wants is Quentin's blood, and he punches into Quentin's chest and rips out his still beating heart. Zangar then carries Quentin over to the window and throws him out of it, down into the streets below. Zangar, now successfully having gotten his revenge, he feels satisfied, but it is brief, fleeting at best. Zangar then feels emptiness inside, once again gnawing away at his soul. This Zangar storyline was supposed to, in some ways, mirror Teeg's own story. Teeg and Zangar are both tragic figures. Both of them feel doomed. We even know from earlier volumes of Criminal that Teeg does in fact die in the future. Teeg, he robbed an armored truck, and Zangar robbed some jewels. And in this final scene, Zangar gets his revenge and kills Quentin, who screwed him over, and he feels satisfied, but then he feels empty. And Teeg's partner Wilson here lost Teeg's portion of the armored truck score because he was irresponsible. And Teeg now takes his revenge on Wilson. Mind you, we don't know if Teeg killed Wilson or not. Maybe he just severely beat him. But Teeg, much like Zangar, I am sure, felt brief satisfaction after the violence he committed onto Wilson, but then eventually felt emptiness and moved on. Anyway, that's my interpretation of how the stories kind of mirror each other. Teeg then returns to the car where little Tracy is waiting for him. They drive somewhere else and park, and Tracy asks, "What are we doing now?" And Teeg tells his son to watch the bus stop across the street and tell me when a guy in a prison uniform gets off the bus. Teeg then goes back to reading his comic. Now that's the end of the first story in this volume, and there are some lingering plot threads that will unfortunately go unanswered, and they are purposely left hanging, as this issue was more so just supposed to be a one-shot and be more of a character study of Teeg Lawless and how he thinks, more so than the specific plot details and wrapping up the story nicely. We don't know who put the hit out on Teeg. We don't know if Teeg killed Wilson or not. We don't learn what this next job with Ringo for Sebastian Hyde is. And we don't know what Teeg ended up doing once Tracy spots the guy in the prison guard uniform at the bus stop. I'll be honest, I find that all a little bit disappointing. This stuff is just left hanging, but it is what it is. The next issue, Wrong Place, jumps ahead 3 years and focuses on a young Tracy Lawless and tells a story from his perspective, and it is a character study on Tracy and his relationship with his dad, Teeg, and the contrasting differences between the two of them. So, issue 2, Wrong Place. This is from the Criminal 10th Anniversary Special issue that came out in 2016. This issue was set 3 years after the previous story, and it is set in the summer of 1979. Tracy Lawless, who is 12 years old, he is on the road with his dad. Tracy is filling up gas in their car, and then he goes to sit in the driver's seat while Teeg is busy in the gas station robbing the place. Tracy is acting as the getaway driver here. A customer at the gas station sees that Tracy is gonna go drive the car and he questions him. Says that Tracy is too young to be driving. Tracy tells the customer, "You better leave me alone, mister. Get back to your truck and drive right now." The customer is a little insulted and asks Tracy, "Whoa, boy, who do you think you're talking to?" And Tracy says he's trying to help him here. Just at that moment, Teeg comes running out of the gas station. He has his head covered, and he pistol whips that customer in the head, knocking him out violently. Teeg then tells Tracy to drive, and the two of them speed off. Tracy and Teeg have been on the road for about a week. Teeg, he got a phone call where Tracy just heard his dad saying shit a lot. And the next thing Tracy knew, the two of them were on the road and on their way out of town. Teeg wanted Tracy to come along, as supposedly a man with a son attracts less attention on the road. Now Teeg is apparently looking for someone. Tracy doesn't really know all of the details. They drive a lot and they stop in these little towns, and Teeg asks questions and Tracy stays back in the car or in a shitty motel room. Tracy has to sometimes help Teeg break into houses or rob gas stations or switch out license plates on cars or various other tasks. Teeg tells his son to not talk to any strangers. They don't need to attract any attention. Tracy, he is a little bit upset about being dragged on this trip. This is not what he wanted. This is not how he wanted to spend his summer. Teeg has a gift for Tracy though. It's Tracy's birthday and he got him a comic book called Deadly Hands, featuring a character named Fang, the Kung Fu werewolf. Teeg says the clerk at the gas station was reading it and he figured Tracy might like it. Tracy thanks his dad. He says that he does like it. Tracy reads a little bit of this comic book now. Fang, the Kung Fu werewolf. His human name is Dane Draven. Now Fang, he is running across the city, trying to get back to his apartment in time before he changes back into his human form. He makes it through the window just in time, transforming back into human college student Dane Draven. In his apartment, Dane sees his friend Rennie and Rennie's sexy girlfriend Mona. Dane Draven seems to have a crush on Mona and finds her smart, beautiful, and perfect. Dane is worried though because Mona is talking about dropping out of college. She wants to just start her career and get out there in the world. Jumping back to Tracy in the motel room, Tracy gets interrupted with his reading. His dad tells him that he has something he needs Tracy to do. So they drive to some place called Eel Valley. It's another small town. Teeg wants Tracy to go to the market on the corner called Smith's Grocery and look around, buy a few chocolate bars, and try to find a girl named Lana. Tracy asks his dad, how will I know if it's her or not? And Teeg tells him, I don't know, figure it out, dipshit. Read her name tag, eavesdrop. Just don't be obvious about it. So Tracy, he goes into this grocery store. He's looking around, he's trying to find this Lana woman. He asks one of the employees there if they have a comic book called Deadly Hands. Tracy wants to find more issues of that werewolf comic his dad gave him. The female employee says no, she's never heard of it. She wishes she could help. Tracy replies, thanks anyway, you're a real nice lady. I'm Mikey. Mikey is a fake name that Teeg told Tracy to use on their journey this summer. The employee replies, well, nice to meet you, Mikey. I'm Lana. Boom, Tracy found her. He found this Lana. He goes to leave the grocery store. He gets the chocolate bars though, and before he leaves, Lana tells him to check out this Walter's bookstore a few doors down. Walter might have the comic book that he's looking for. Tracy leaves. He returns to the car with the chocolate bars, and tells his dad that he found Lana. They sit in the car for a few hours, watching the grocery store where Lana works. Turns out the chocolate bars were their dinner. Eventually, Lana gets off work at the end of the day. Tracy points her out to his dad. Tracy asks his dad, "Is she the one we're after?" And Teeg answers, "No." And Tracy asks, "Then what are we doing here?" And Teeg answers, "None of your damn business, that's what. Now stop asking questions. Get back to the motel and I'll be there later." Tracy tells his dad, "Dad, don't hurt her." And Teeg, looking at his son, responds, "Jesus Christ, kid, what do you think I am? Just get back to the motel." Tracy, he goes back to the motel, and he reads more of the Deadly Hands comic. So we see Fang, he is running around the city. He is looking for the villain named Mystico, as well as Mystico's ninjas. Now while Fang is running around and fighting ninjas, he is daydreaming about Mona, his big crush, and how he needs to tell her his feelings for her. In the morning, Tracy wakes up in the motel room. His dad still hasn't come back to the motel. Teeg has apparently done this a few times. Tracy has about $8 on him, change from all the various things his dad made him buy for him, like beer, cigarettes, or the chocolate bars from yesterday. Tracy wants to save that money though to buy another comic book of Deadly Hands, but now he might have to spend it on food, which annoys him. Tracy, he wanders around town, going through a neighborhood. He's looking for people away on summer vacation, so he has his eyes out for lawns that have overgrown grass and piled up newspapers. He's thinking of maybe breaking in and stealing some food. He decides against it though. He doesn't know how much longer they're going to be stuck in this town. It's a stupid risk to take to break and enter. He remembers a lesson his dad taught him. Never draw attention to yourself on the road. You don't want to be remembered. Tracy, he eventually arrives at Walter's bookstore, which is closed, unfortunately. So Tracy, he just sits outside waiting for it to open, and he reads more of his comic book. Fang is hanging out with Mona at a rally against air pollution. All of a sudden, Fang starts transforming into his werewolf form, and he is worried that Mona will see him. Tracy gets interrupted with his reading by a nosy little 13-year-old girl named Gabby Wilkers. Gabby asks if she can see his comic book, and Tracy says no. And Gabby asks, "Why not?" And Tracy replies, "Because I said." And Gabby tells Tracy that you're weird. Tracy asks, "When is the store gonna open?" And Gabby answers, "Whenever Walter decides." Gabby, she begins banging loudly on the door to the store and she yells, "Hey Walter, you've got customers!" Walter, the bookstore owner, eventually comes and lets the two of them in. Tracy asks where the comic books are. Walter points to a room in the back left of the store. Tracy, he digs through boxes for an hour and he doesn't find what he's looking for, so he eventually just outright asks the old man if he's seen this Deadly Hands comic before and if he has any more lying around somewhere. Walter says, he might have some back at his house, but they're old and they're collector's items, so it might be worth like $5 or $10. Tracy comments, "I don't want to collect it, I just want to read it." Walter tells Tracy to come back tomorrow and he'll see what he can find. Tracy leaves the store and Gabby follows him. She asks again if she can see Tracy's comic, and he says, sure, whatever. The two of them go grab some food at a nearby hamburger restaurant. Tracy told Gabby that his name was Mike Johnson, a fake, very forgettable name. Gabby, she's looking through that Fang comic book, and she comments laughing how terrible it is. Tracy says, "I don't know, I kinda like it." And Gabby comments, "And this girl character, Mona, so stupid." And Tracy argues with her, "No, she's not. She's cool." And Gabby asks, "Why is she cool? Because you can see her boobs?" Tracy, rolling his eyes, answers, "No, that's not why." The two of them, they then walk around town a bit. Tracy thinks that Gabby is pretty smart and sarcastic. She says that she reads a lot of books, but He suspects she doesn't have that many friends. Not that she cares about that at all, though. Gabby asks Tracy to come with her into the woods. There's supposed to be a fort in there. Tracy, though, he remembers his dad's lessons about keeping a low profile, not making friends on the road, so he declines the invite and says he has to get back to the motel. His dad might be looking for him. Back to the Deadly Hands comic. Fang, he fought through some ninjas, and he is now confronting Mystico, the villain. Mystico teleports away, though, before Fang can get to him. The next morning, Tracy wakes up in the motel room. His dad still hasn't returned to the motel. Tracy, he goes to the bookstore to see if Walter found that comic for him. Walter, of course, forgot to even look for it. He tells Tracy, though, to come back the next day. Tracy leaves the store, and Gabby is there to greet him. She asks Tracy if he wants to hang out. Tracy says yes. Tracy, he knows he's not supposed to be hanging out with Gabby. He's not supposed to make friends, but whatever. His dad doesn't even check on him to see if he's alive, so screw it. Tracy hangs out with Gabby. They sword fight with sticks. They eat ice cream. They look at old abandoned broken cars. They throw rocks at an old house and they run away. Tracy eventually spots his dad's car driving around. Tracy grabs Gabby and they hide. He wants to make sure his dad doesn't see them. They watch Teeg and this Lana, the girl from the grocery store, get out of the car together, and the two of them go inside Lana's home. Tracy says that that's his dad, and Gabby recognizes Lana and says, "That's Lana Davis, she's married." Tracy comments that his dad is married too. The two of them sneak over to the window of the house, and they see that Teeg is getting a blowjob from Lana, and then they have sex. Tracy then storms off angry, and Gabby follows him. Gabby is kind of shocked. She comments, "Man, they just got straight to it. I think they were drunk maybe." Tracy, he doesn't want to talk about it. Gabby comments, and man, her boobs were really big, right? Back to the Deadly Hands comic. Fang is spotted by Mona in their apartment in his werewolf form, and Mona is surprised. The next morning, Teeg Lawless came back to the motel and he grabbed Tracy so the two of them can then head off. They drove into the mountains for what seemed like a long time, following a hand-drawn map. The man that Teeg is looking for has apparently been living up in the woods, guarding a crop of weed up here, and he is going to be coming back to town today. The man that Teeg is looking for was the husband of Lana Davis. That's why Teeg was looking for Lana, so that Lana could tell him where her husband is. Teeg and Tracy park, and they begin to watch a truck that apparently belonged to this Mr. Davis, their target. Eventually, Mr. Davis returns to his truck, but of course it won't start. Teeg yanked the distributor cap off. Teeg then walks over to this Davis, and Davis, who recognizes Teeg, is surprised to see him and asks him, "Oh shit, Teeg, what are you doing out here all the way in the sticks, man?" Teeg tells him, "The cops found the body." Teeg then pulls out a gun and shoots and kills Davis. Teeg then comments, "Frickin' Davis, you had one job, asshole." So apparently this Davis was in charge of getting rid of a particular body, and that body got found, so now Davis had to be knocked off so he wouldn't talk to the police. Teeg drags the body of Davis back to his car, and he tells Tracy to pop open the trunk. Tracy, he does so, and when Tracy opens the trunk, he sees the dead body of Lana Davis in it. It startles Tracy. He wasn't expecting that. He falls back down to the ground. Teeg, he throws the body of Davis in there with Lana. Tracy says to his dad, "That lady, she was nice." Tracy told his dad earlier to not hurt her. Teeg answers, "Yeah, she was nice, but she had a big mouth." They begin driving back down the mountain, back to town. Teeg was lecturing Tracy explaining that the cops were already looking for Davis, and Davis would lead them straight to me and Ringo and my boss, Sebastian Hyde. So he had to get rid of him. Tracy, he just nods at his dad's explanation. He sort of understands where his dad is coming from, but he's still sad to think about this Lana being killed. They arrive back in town. Teeg parks the car and stops to pay their motel bill before they can then head home. Tracy, he finds it interesting that his dad will murder 2 people but won't skip out on the tab at a motel because cheats get remembered. As Tracy is sitting in the car waiting for his dad to pay their motel bill, Gabby, excited, runs up to the car and she shows Tracy that she bought the comic book for him that he wanted. She excitedly has a copy of Deadly Hands on her. She says that Walter brought it in, and she got it for him with her store credit. She trades tons of books in there. Tracy is worried though. He can't let his dad see Gabby. If his dad finds out he made a friend, maybe his dad will worry that they will be remembered, and maybe his dad will hurt or even kill Gabby. Tracy tells Gabby, "Gabby, you have to get out of here." Gabby, upset, asks, "Why? What's wrong with you?" We see in the background, Teeg can be seen in the motel paying their bill. Tracy tells her, "Nothing, just you're gonna get me in trouble." Gabby says, "You're being weird again." And Tracy tells her, "Just go, okay? Before he sees you, I'm not allowed to have friends." And Gabby replies, "God, that's so stupid." And Tracy says, "Please, Gabby." Gabby eventually says, "Okay, fine. Here's your stupid comic. Nice knowing you." And she leaves. Tracy is holding the new comic book in his hands, and Teeg returns to the car and asks, "Were you talking to that kid?" And Tracy says, "Yeah, she just wanted change for the candy machine." And Teeg asks, "Why didn't she ask in the office?" And Tracy answers, "I don't know, she's just some dumb girl, who cares?" They then continue their drive home. Back to the Deadly Hands comic. Fang's best friend Rennie apparently got killed, and Fang got framed for the murder. Someone was trying to kill Fang, and Rennie got killed instead. They're at Rennie's funeral, and Fang is trying to talk to Mona, but she doesn't want to talk to him. Fang says that he needs her, and he's going to find Rennie's killer and prove his innocence. But Mona tells Fang, "I didn't tell the Fuzz your secret because I know Fang would never have hurt Rennie, but whoever did this was after you, and Rennie got in the way. I know it ain't fair, but I don't think I can forget that anytime soon." As Tracy is reading the comic, he sees that Gabby slipped a picture of herself in the comic for him, and on the back of the picture she wrote, "If you want to be pen pals, I'll write back, I promise." And she wrote her address on the back of the picture. Teeg is in the motel room, drinking. Tracy, he walks with the comic and the picture into the motel room bathroom, and he closes the door. Tracy, he rips the picture of Gabby up and flushes it down the toilet. He does this to protect her. Tracy then sits by the bathtub and reads the comic some more as his dad is drinking in the other room. And that is the end of Volume 7. Alright, that was Volume 7. I think this was my least favorite of all the criminal volumes I've covered so far, although I still think it is very good. Now, the story with Teeg Lawless in the first issue, the one where he was in prison, I thought was pretty entertaining, watching him be in prison, have to fight his way out of there and survive, and then he finally gets released, and that's kind of it for that story. We're left with a lot of dangling plot threads that never get answered, and that's what makes it kind of unsatisfying. But the second story I thought was very, very strong. I really liked seeing Teeg Lawless and his son Tracy traveling around and going on this adventure, and we see the kind of messed up father-son relationship they have, and how Teeg is really sort of indoctrinating Tracy into this criminal world. He's using Tracy to pull off heists. He's using Tracy on this murder mission that he is on. And then he just abandons Tracy for days at a time, and Tracy has to fend for himself. I really liked the Tracy and Gabby storyline. I love coming of age stories, and I loved seeing these kids just kind of be kids, but also get into some sort of a messed up situation as well. Very fun. And the ending of this issue I thought was very touching, where Gabby buys this comic for Tracy. She wants to remain friends with him, be pen pals with him, but Tracy, he's telling her, you gotta get out of here. My dad cannot find out about our friendship. He's trying to save her life, and he's trying to save her life by pushing her away, pushing away her friendship, which is very kind of sad, but also very fitting for the end of the story. So I thought that was very, very good. Now, the stories within the story, the comic stories we had in here, they were kind of fun, but I don't think they were really needed. So that's where I'm a little bit mixed on them. But like I said, they were fun. Zangar, it was pretty crazy stuff. Him just killing everybody and all the naked women in his story. And then the story with this Fang werewolf guy was kind of compelling, but not the best, I think. So I could have done away with those. But on the whole, I think this was still a pretty good volume. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Thank you all for watching. And I'll be back next week with more Criminal, and we are slowly approaching the end of this series.